Have you ever had one of those days where you were just frustrated with selling? You just thought to yourself, man, if I had only years ago picking a different career path. We've all been in that situation, and we've all had those moments where we were frustrated with sales. And so often that frustration with sales stems with the fact that we really do not have enough clients. We're not getting enough sales. And there are a couple of different areas that really lead to that frustration around not having enough sales. Because the world of selling is just changing so dramatically, and I hear so much frustration out there with the fact that what they were doing even a few years ago simply is no longer working. So in this video, I'm going to show you 7 easy ways to get more clients. Check it out. Number 1, have a prospecting system. I find that the biggest frustration around sales is that we simply don't have enough leads coming into our world. If we could just get more leads, so many other things would kind of self-correct. Salespeople often are pretty haphazard about how they're generating those new leads. Every salesperson should have a prospecting system. And by prospecting system, I literally mean a systematic approach for generating new opportunities, where they don't have to even think about it on a day-to-day basis. It's just consistently happening. And oftentimes there's a lot of sales activity that goes into that happening, but they're not waking up in the morning and saying to themselves today, gee, what do I have to do today to drum up new opportunities? They know exactly what it is. Their CRM is telling them exactly what they have to do, how many calls they have to make and to whom, how many emails they have to send and to whom, how many LinkedIn invitations they need to send, how many packages they're sending, the whole piece. So that way they know exactly what they have to do on a day-to-day basis. If you implement that, you are going to find so much less frustration around generating new business. Number 2, focus on introductions. This is really back to the blocking and tackling of sales and lead generation. We so often are focused on cold opportunities where we find people and we say, how can I sell stuff to those folks who I have no connection to? Whereas we can actually be leaning on our existing network of people to get introductions to other folks just like them who we could ultimately be serving. And so what we need to do is come up with an introduction strategy where every single person that we're talking to, we are asking for introductions to new business. Now, I have a ton of other videos on just that topic, so if you want that, just look up those videos. But you need to be very proactive, consistent, and intentional about driving introductions. It's one of the easiest ways to generate some of the best business that's out there. Especially if you've been selling for a number of years, you have a whole network of people that you can lean on. And quite frankly, even if you've only been selling for a few months, chances are there are people that you can be reaching out to right now who could introduce you to other folks that could lead to new business. Number 3, target your top 20. What I see about prospecting so often is that sales reps are quite often indiscriminate about the types of prospects that they're reaching out to. One day they're reaching out to some really small prospects who, even if they sold, could lead to very little business. Then on another day they're reaching out to the really big ones, and maybe they're just mixing them all in, and there's not a lot of thought that's going into who are your absolute ideal prospects and how am I going to target each one of those individually. What we want to do is think big, right? So often we think little, but how can you think big? If you could identify a prospect who, if you sold them, it would be game-changing to your sales numbers. Identifying that list of, let's say, the top 20 prospects that if you could sell them, it would be a big deal. And identifying everything that you possibly can about them. You really hyper-target who they are, who's the prospect, what's their title, what kind of data and information can you get about them to more relevantly start that conversation. Maybe specific press releases that their organization has put out, or something that they've maybe tweeted, or whatever it is, getting as much information on those top 20 prospects and then target them in a systematic and consistent approach. So that way, it's almost like a nurture campaign where you're reaching out to them, you're providing some value, you're offering them some stuff that's useful, And ultimately, in the long run, you're developing a relationship slowly with those top 20 people. And that way, by the time you actually get them on the phone, they know who you are. Number 4, stop needing the business. This is so big. And I see so often reps that are at the point of frustration in sales start to emanate a neediness. And I always think back to dating. Have you ever seen someone, or maybe been in the position of you're dating and you meet this person who so obviously is just willing to do anything to make sure that you start a relationship with them or that you continue the relationship. And so they come off as so needy. What happens in your head? You're like, oh, I'm good, right? It's amazing how just that neediness can be immediately off-putting. Well, the same is true for your prospects. Your prospects, if you feel like you absolutely need to close this sale, if you're willing to discount, if you're willing to do anything to close the sale, they are going to immediately be turned off. And at the very least, they're going to sense that and they're going to take advantage of it. And they're going to beat you up on price and they're going to do all those things that we spend all of our time trying to avoid. Right? We need to make sure that we don't come off as needing the business, but instead show that we are a true expert. We don't need the business. And we want to determine whether there's a fit. And when you do that, it's amazing how quickly a prospect immediately puts you in the category of high value individual. And when you're in that category of high value individual, they start talking to you differently. They start answering your questions more thoughtfully. They start treating you in a way that is consistent with the way that you see yourself. So stop needing that business. Number 5, establish authority up front. This is really a big piece, and it's something that we're focused on a lot over here at our organization, which is that the more authority that you can establish at the beginning of an interaction, the more likely that prospect is to see you as an expert, but also to be willing to answer any questions that you have, to engage in a conversation, to have more than a 4-minute conversation, right? But instead to have a 1-hour conversation. By establishing that authority at the beginning of the interaction, by showing that you really understand what's going on in their world and you understand what's going on in the world of other companies in their marketplace, you suddenly change the way you are perceived by your prospects. And they're much more willing to talk to you. They're much more willing to engage in that conversation, which ultimately is going to lead to more sales. So by establishing that authority up front, we now are buying so much more goodwill over the course of the rest of the conversation. Number 6, disqualify prospects. Disqualification is the complete opposite of what most sales reps are doing out there. Right? Most sales reps are trying to persuade prospects to do business with them. They're trying to say, hey, how could I persuade you to work with me today, right? Or some cheesy version of that. Then you have another category of reps that are trying to qualify reps who are saying, I want to ask some questions and I want to understand what's going on and all that. And that's fine too, but it doesn't really scream high value. And then the last category are the really elite reps who are actually disqualifying. They're saying things like, you know what, George, can I ask you some questions just to see if we're even a fit in the first place? They're starting at the point of, I'm not sure if this is really a fit. And when you do that, immediately takes so much pressure off of your prospects. And so when you ask questions of your prospects, they want to answer it, and they often want to answer it in the right way because they're thinking, oh, well, I want to make sure that I'm a fit. And so by having that disqualification mindset, you suddenly seem so much higher value. You're suddenly that high value doctor as opposed to that low value salesperson who's just willing to say or do anything in order to close the sale. Number 7, sell more deeply to clients. So much of what we focus on from a sales training perspective is how can I turn new people into business? But what about those existing pieces of business that you have right now that are maybe only utilizing you 50% of what they could fully utilize you at? How could you get those people who already know you, who already have a relationship with you, to go from 50% to 75% or 100%? and ultimately provide more services, more value that can help them grow their business, achieve their goals, but at the same time help you hit your sales number without having to make hundreds of cold calls all the time and identify tons of new business. So often there's so much low-hanging fruit on your existing book of business, and so how can you get in front of those people? By having, let's say, quarterly reviews with them, where every quarter you're engaging them in conversations, you're asking them questions, you're understanding how their business could be better improved, and then you're making recommendations on how you might be able to ultimately help them. The idea of selling more deeply is so important because we beat our heads against the wall trying to generate new business, but so often there's so much out there with just the people that we already are connected to. It's easier, it's less confrontational, and ultimately, it's going to lead to a lot more income. So there are the 7 easy ways to get more clients. And if you enjoyed this video, then I have an awesome free training on the data-driven approach to help you crush your sales goals. Just click right here to get registered instantly. Seriously, just click right here. This is an in-depth training that will help you close more deals at higher prices, all while generating more meetings. Also, if you got some value, please like this video below on YouTube and be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking my face, which should be right about here, to get access to a new video just like this one each week.